Happy Monster Mash Month to all my Dybbuk dudes, Gorgon gals, and Nymph non-binary pals. It's time for a list. For the last 2 years I've compiled some lesser seen and discussed gems of the horror genre, and I thought I'd keep on doing it.
It's the coming attractions of the soul.
I don't want to be one of those clickbait chin strokers who narcissistically infers that they're more in the know by titling videos "blank is the best movie you've never seen." I think that's really lame, and you may have caught quite a few or all of these, and if so, that's glorious. This list is just made up of some of the underrated boos, cultish cries, and horror adjacent efforts some of you maybe haven't gotten around to yet. So here are another 20 lip quiverers I want to share with you all today. Upon reuniting with his old college compatriots for a weekend away, Pete finds himself in a comedy of manners where the joke is always at his expense and never particularly funny.
Listen, Pete. Just so you know, you're not doing too well.
What?
This weekend so far, I mean, you've been a bit crap, haven't you?
In taking that all too common blend of self-conscious insecurity and the self-centered belief that each of us has an entitlement to being liked, All My Friends Hate Me does for social embarrassment and awkward conversations what Misery did for typewriters and sledgehammers. By microscopically fixating on ruminations and nervous doubts, questions like, do my friends talk about me behind my back, and is everyone secretly annoyed at me, become malignant tumours of graceless discomfort that spread and snuff out all but the most cringing trepidation.
You do know that this is all your fault.
What is?
Everything.
If you're the kind of person who seeks constant validation, longs for acceptance, and secretly worries that their closest allies tolerate rather than cherish you, All My Friends Hate Me will leave you shivering as you pretend to smile through the pain. Born and raised in a remote Korean community where misogyny is a set-in-stone commandment of their day-to-day, a worn-down woman seeks a way out of a life of suffering. Bedeviled argues that, whether on an agricultural island home to 9 individuals, or in the bumper-to-bumper throng of souls 9 million strong, there's something terribly wrong with the power differentials and societal expectations between men and women. More interestingly, what we have here is a snapping rebuke to the terror of internalized misogyny. When friends, family, and support systems look the other way or outright make themselves accomplices to systemic abuse, well, it'd be enough to have anyone reaching for a rusty sickle. Conveyed with searing melancholy by Seo Yong-hee in a turn as compelling as any you're ever likely to encounter, Bedeviled is far from a pleasant viewing experience, but it absolutely is something that needs to be experienced.
Todd, I don't like this, Todd. You better come back.
Twin brothers Todd and Terry play a grotesque game of cat and mouse as their family and friends settle down for some Thanksgiving festivities.
Oh, look what the cat brought in.
Blood Rage, aka Slasher, aka Nightmare at Shadow Woods, is a gleefully brash procession of goofball gore, twins plagued with extreme mental health concerns, tennis nymphettes, and not a shred of pretense. Each character will get high and die, get horny and die, or die whilst high and horny. You can practically set your watch by it. It's a darn lovable emblem of the halcyon days of claret spraying smut that leans into the peculiarity of each contrived new way to carve up suburbia. There's even a running meta-gag about the killer trying to make fetch happen by coining his own tagline.
It's not cranberry sauce.
So turn up that stellar synth score and let blood rage smother your synapses in schlock. Troubled by the pitfalls of high school and sitting on the cusp of young womanhood, Mia starts to change in unexpected and increasingly distressing ways. Blew My Mind slides the inherent body horror of puberty under the bristling scales of mermaid folklore, and in doing so adds a refreshing dose of Ken Loach social realism to the monsters as a manifestation of our darker selves schematics that have served this genre for about a century. By making the gradual, icky transformation another grueling, confusing differentiator to be covered up by a hormonal teen who's just trying to fit in, director Lisa Brulman manages to turn what could have been an allegorical gimmick into a thoughtfully considered examination of sexualization, self-harm, and pubescent chaos, as wrought on a girl trying to reckon with her own body as she contends with the judgmental eyes and predatory gaze of an unkind adolescence. In many ways a sister film to Julia Ducournau's Raw and Eliza Hittman's Never Rarely Sometimes Always, Blew My Mind is proof positive that you can make a horror movie about a sea siren that doesn't remotely suck. Abducted as a child and imprisoned by a taxi-driving serial killer, a young man tries to maintain his humanity as he is forced to act as an accomplice to his captor's crimes.
I won't take the puzzles apart, I won't kill them. I give you a gift of knowledge, and you f***ing away!
Director Jennifer Lynch doesn't have the strongest filmography and has never enjoyed anything approaching the critical or commercial success of her beloved father. Still, I've always appreciated the matter-of-fact brand of nasty nihilism she brings to her projects, and Chained is arguably her best feature. Buoyed by Vincent D'Onofrio's lisping menace and Eamon Farron's dejected compliance, this is very much a chamber piece about the warring roles nature and nurture play in shaping morality. It's also a solemn lament for the sons burdened by the demons of their fathers, and the damning outcomes these cycles of violence and chauvinism can have on the women who interact with them.
Nothing like the taste of a woman to make you clear!
Economically lean and tremendously acted, Chained is a melancholy, ruthless work of mildew and rust. During the rise of Nazism, an eccentric crematory worker descends into a confused state of philosophical miscomprehension and abject insanity as he seeks to liberate humanity by burning them one at a time.
Pomni, že prach si a v prach se obrátíš. Takové krematorium je vlastně, milí přátelé, velmi bohumilá věc. Vždyť ono pomáhá Pánu Bohu tu přeměnu člověka v prachu zvyšovat.
A paragon of the Czech New Wave movement, the cremator is a post-war expression of institutional complicity and the repugnant ways doctrine and mysticism can and have been used to justify dreadful things. This isn't so much about the banality of evil, rather it shows the cowardice and lack of conviction required for hateful ideologies to take root and flourish. As the titular cremator, Rudolf Ruzinski delivers a landmark performance as an unreadable man who perceives all life as trapped carbon just waiting to be freed by his furnace. This sociopathic sensibility is echoed by an always escalating editorial tempo, a skewed cinematographic eye for the uncanny, and satirical spurs of comedy to underscore the hypocritical nightmare of the Nazi apparatus. A slow burn of madness and fish-eyed absurdity, The Cremator is presently available in full on YouTube, and it's a piece of history you shouldn't ignore. As college winds down and students plan their postgraduate lives, an anonymous killer starts to carve his way across the campus. Breezily unfolding as a proto-Richard Linklater hangout movie before bluntly slamming into slasher territory, Final Exam is a rare film that plays up its structural and tonal inconsistencies in such a way that elevates it far beyond its rudimentary components. Sure, the finished product is wall-to-wall hokey acting, backed by a score that somehow seems to think that stealing the themes of both The Exorcist and Halloween will somehow cancel out the plagiarism, but by setting aside 2 whole acts and dedicating them to characters rather than kills, we get to know and understand these typical jocks, frat bros, bookish warriors, and hopeless romantics.
What's the matter?
Oh, life. It's just not fair.
No, but at least it's not fair to everybody. Or is that a paradox?
One moment they're packing up their dorms and readying themselves for the next step on life's journey, and then they're all dead, unceremoniously snuffed out by a motiveless stranger's store-bought knife. Nothing grand, nothing extraordinary, just a nondescript nobody who decided to kill their big plans and little dreams. Final Exam really got to me in a way I don't think even the filmmakers intended. In this Netflix anthology series of chilling tales helmed by some of the modern-day luminaries of the genre, Guillermo del Toro collects a decidedly mixed bag, but his cabinet of curiosities does have 3 standout pieces of essential viewing. Graveyard Rats is a gothic short from the mind of Vincenzo Natali, who's most famous for Splice and Cube, which sees a grave-robbing opportunist facing off against a tidal wave of gnashing vermin. Next, Panos Cosmatos makes his follow-up to Mandy with another visually resplendent dose of disquieting psychedelia and entrancing strangeness with The Viewing.
I have seen things that would make you shit your mind, Kimosabi.
Finally, and with my personal favourite of the bunch, The Empty Man's David Pryor teams up with David S. Goyer for The Autopsy. After an aging pathologist is called to perform a series of post-mortems in the wake of a mining disaster, he finds himself peeling back the skin on a parasitic threat that defies all notions of human decency and mortality. The other episodes really aren't much to write home about, but these 3 are all wonderfully concise doses of short-form horror available to anyone with a Netflix account. Fleeing domestic violence and caught in the seedy underbelly of New York City, Jennifer is conscripted into a gang of vigilantes who seek out and destroy predatory men. A no-wave marvel of boiling urgency, A Gun for Jennifer has a fascinating lost and found behind-the-scenes story that seems perfectly befitting of its punk-as-hell outlook. Scrappily shot on 16mm and a DIY ethos in 1995, the film vanished from existence after a few rapturous screenings. You see, it turns out the principal financier had allegedly been using the budget as a means of cleaning and embezzling wads of cash. Thus, A Gun for Jennifer and its Take No Prisoners rebuke of Brock Turner culture went unseen for over 25 years.
Did I hit it?
Now, thanks to the good folks at Vinegar Syndrome, we can all bask in this radical exploitation throwback that refuses to go back, as it tells its snarling tale of a balaclava-wearing, gun-wielding collective of women who roam the streets of NYC, butchering and blowing away all the sex-offending scumbags they can. Simply put, it's one of the most vitriolic, unapologetically unvarnished doses of blown-out brains and hacked-off junk you could ever hope to cheer along to.
Talk to him. Say, welcome, welcome, President Bush. We're glad you're here.
Documenting a fundamentalist summer camp built specifically to turn children into pamphleteers and political lobbyists for Christian extremism, a camera crew captures a group of impressionable kids and the parents, preachers, and parishioners intent on building an army of child soldiers in the name of Christ.
You're a phony and a hypocrite. We can't have phonies in the army of God.
The extent to which things have only gotten worse since Jesus Camp unambiguously demonstrated the far-right evangelical and Pentecostal grift, well, it's a bitter pill to choke down.
Raise up a moral outcry that can overthrow abortion in America.
The unflinching commitment to weaponizing children, who legally cannot consent, as the first strike in a culture war, adults proudly admitting to the indoctrination of preteens towards hatred of the other, for-profit sermonizers and wealthy conservatives, laughing their way to the bank after tricking evangelicals into thinking anti-vax, climate change denial and bigotry are biblical mandates. It's the Roger Stone Breitbart playbook as performed by tongue-speaking, educationally failed kids.
Science doesn't prove anything. And it's really interesting when you look at it that way.
As terrifying and depressing now as it was back in 2006, it's hard not to watch Jesus Camp as a warning we collectively ignored. A Spanish family are terrorized by a criminal collective who have forced their way into their idyllic home. Running a meat and potatoes home invasion thriller through a fine mesh screen until it's cold pulp, Kidnapped doesn't much care for pomp, circumstance, or social commentary. Just lashings of harshness and a terminally bleak disposition. Presented as a series of excruciating long takes and split-screen perspectives playing out in real time, the palpable anxiety is continually cranked until I felt like I'd swallowed an anchor knot. As each gnarled act of callousness refuses to cut away, the virtuosity of the camera work makes for a chilling contrast with the guttural yelps of these bleeding, pleading victims. While the final stretch makes for a dizzying display of synchronized and choreographed carnage, which I'm not going to spoil here, it does raise the question, when is cruelty too cruel? Your overall feelings for Kidnapped will ultimately come down to how you respond to its played-out plot structure, and how much barbarity you can take as the credits close in.
So I'm gonna stop talking for a second. Just check out how quiet it is.
Mark moves to a house in the woods to heal and escape the ceaseless thrum of Washington, but the quiet of the forest seems far too loud.
It's the exact same sound as last night. That sounds like someone hitting a tree with a baseball bat. And that one sounds a lot closer.
Using the found footage format to document the crippling worry faced by those with OCD, Leaving DC clears the first and toughest hurdle of this subgenre. It justifies why the footage exists, given that a common strategy to self-soothe and alleviate obsessive-compulsive behaviours is to talk through simple actions out loud and record every flick of a switch and turn of a key when you leave the house. So what happens if you transpose these habitual actions to someone in a potentially haunted place? Well, Mark goes to logical and illogical lengths to capture what troubles him. At first to give his irrational tics purpose, but eventually he does it just to prove he's not having an episode.
But things are good, and I'm still glad that I made this move out here. And as you know, I will be back on the 6th and 7th, less than 2.
Leaving DC has no soundtrack, no jump scares, and no special effects. Just a mountain of mood and a glacial drip of torment. A perplexed detective tries to get to the bottom of a spree of mutilations and murders, targeting local co-eds.
What are you doing? No, please, no!
Pieces is the template by which all other Eurotrash-inflected slashers of the early 1980s can and should be measured. Few features of such shameless debasement commit with this much dumb guy confidence. Right down to the perfect tagline, Pieces. It's exactly what you think it is.
Well, I'm not a pathologist, but even a layman can see it was done with this.
As a spectacle of tastelessness and evisceration, this is tantamount to a porno truck jumping the curb and exploding on impact with the nearest gut wagon. I of course mean that as a beaming compliment. Ditto the Casio preset keyboard soundtrack that bloops beneath guffawingly dubbed dialogue, all of which makes this feel like a Quaalude overdose.
By the way, you free tonight, huh? Hey. So I'm slayed by a withering look. Gives a shit.
Look, he knows everyone on that college campus. He could smell something suspicious faster than we can.
If you can stomach the gluttonous sprays of innards and the scabrous woman-hating that, even by the non-existent standards of peak exploitation cinema, is just plain bullshit, Pieces is a bonkers ride that'll play absolutely great if you're completely hammered. Margaret's antiseptic world is thrown into disarray when she's confronted by a man from her past who previously endeavoured to destroy her life.
Stay away from me and my kid.
Well, you approached me, madam. I don't know who you are.
Don't play f***ing games. Why are you here? Why now?
Okay, you are mistaking me for someone else.
Spousal abuse, coercive control, Resurrection finds sinewy and sickening gravitas in each of these delicate but tragically relatable subjects that need to be exposed to light and allowed to scream until the intended audience takes notice. A daunting slurry of restrained and deranged, there's an icy ambience here that never lets up. If anything, the dread only compounds and starts to crush down anytime it feels appropriate to take a calming breath. No more so than in its centerpiece sequence, a single take 7-minute uninterrupted monologue by Rebecca Hall that functions as an emotional death grip and an undisputable argument in favour of crowning Hall as one of the great living actresses.
David told me not to tell anyone. He forbade me from giving birth. I tried to stop it. It kept growing.
Rounded out by a despicable Tim Roth and a sinister atmosphere that permeates every seemingly innocuous exchange, Resurrection is a headfirst fall into a spiral of despair.
She's taking over your role.
All right, come on, let's run through that again. Into music. All right?
Locked in a theatre as they run a dress rehearsal for their upcoming play, a group of actors are picked off by a recently escaped maniac.
You leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. All right?
Stage fright's high camp histrionics and slavish stylization make for an idiosyncratic murder fest. And with Dario Argento protege Michele Soavi calling action on the whole thing, you know damn well it's going to be a gullet-rupturing good time. What it lacks in originality, it makes up for with an owl-headed, chainsaw-wielding skin ripper, treading the boards and making short work of some of the sassiest, snappiest theatre kids to ever be cut in half.
He's still alive! He's still alive!
Fun, fiendishly irreverent, and so tightly paced you could bounce a coin off of it, Stage Fright deserves a bigger spotlight than its Italian exploitation origins have allowed up to now. In an attempt to stall a hungry witch as she prepares to eat him, a caged boy regales her with 3 wicked yarns.
Oh my god.
A sopping red bounty of practical effects, delightful design, and a mischievous sense of humour, Tales from the Dark Side is for all intents and purposes what should have been the 3rd installment of the Creepshow franchise. This trilogy of spookiness is slathered in agonising irony, creativity, and a murderer's row of familiar faces. First, a mummy's curse leads to some coat hanger brain scrambling. Second, a Mr. Burns type hires a hitman to assassinate his cat. And finally, a starving artist makes a Faustian pact in pursuit of happiness. And contrary to what happens in most horror anthologies, there is not a weak link in the bunch.
Need a hand up there, fella? Huh? Jesus.
So butter that popcorn and crack a few beers, because Tales from the Dark Side is an easy, breezy, and sorely underappreciated carnal compilation. After the eastern seaboard is bombarded by nuclear warheads, a nearby town tries to make sense of an increasingly hopeless situation.
This is San Francisco. We have lost our New York signal. Radar sources confirm the explosion of nuclear devices there in New York and up and down the East Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, this is real. This is...
An apocalyptic elegy and crushing domestic drama, Testament lends some credence to the notion that, in the event of World War III, the lucky ones will probably die first.
Oh, who did this? God damn you!
The blend of familial sentimentality and aching death as an entire town succumbs to radiation poisoning and societal collapse is as tough to ingest as it is extraordinarily powerful. The most defenseless wither away, parents bury their darlings next to backyard swing sets, and small moments of joy are spiked with the inevitability of cancer and shattered immune systems.
I don't know what day it is. I've lost track. Henry thinks some miracle may save us yet. He's foolish.
The cemetery's full. They're burning the bodies.
Testament should be heralded alongside Threads, The Day After, When the Wind Blows, Grave of the Fireflies, and Miracle Mile. And it's a crime that it isn't. As she puts together her master's thesis on the human attraction to violent images, a student finds a snuff film in the university archives. Ostensibly a mystery noir where an art house cinema aficionado teams up with a hardcore gorehound to play Columbo and uncover a ring of deadly perversion, Thesis is the kind of film to marvel at as you realise how often it's been ripped off without any of its derivatives coming close to its tension or invention. If only this had been the star-making international breakout Anna Torrent deserved.
¿De verdad hay gente que ve estas películas?
Tú, por ejemplo.
Lo mío es distinto. Yo no disfruto viendo esto. Me da asco.
Standing as one of the most confident and perfectly calibrated directorial debuts I've ever seen, this would start an impeccable 4-in-a-row run for Alejandro Amenabar and define him as a uniquely brilliant conveyor of the rot underneath that seeps through and soils the facade of normalcy. Pulsing with the VHS buzz of TV static and ripe with nauseating implications and murky sexuality, Thesis is a truly exceptional marrow and bone thriller. Visual artist and director Aristoteli Marakos crumples, tears and creases nearly 100,000 sheets of copy paper to re-edit and entirely reimagine 1995's much-maligned Stephen King adaptation The Langoliers, a story in which 10 plane passengers find themselves dislocated from time itself and stranded in the vacuum between the past and present tense.
We're discovering the unlovely truth about time travel. That one can't appear in the Texas State School Book Depository on November 22nd, 1963 and hope to stop the Kennedy assassination. One can't witness the building of the pyramids or the sack of Rome or investigate the age of the dinosaurs firsthand. Have a look around you. This is the past.
The Timekeepers of Eternity is something tremendous born from something tepid, taking a 3-hour-long slog, chopping it down to 65 minutes, xeroxing each frame and using these monochromatic pages to recontextualize and completely redeem a 30-year-old TV movie that's best remembered for its awful VFX. The result is a diegesis distorting and adoringly assembled head that filters out the fluff, streamlines the uneasy oddness, and distills every ounce of depth the text has to offer into a potent sensory assault. Avant-garde in its presentation and rapturously intense, The Timekeepers of Eternity is a towering example of the transformative power of reinterpretation. When Matthias brings a second-hand MacBook to game night, his group of friends find themselves pulled into the dark web by the laptop's previous owner. The reason that Unfriended Dark Web succeeds beyond the constraints of novelty and the limits of its own wishy-washy attempts at realism is that for every digital intrusion, it finds an ethereal analogue that can be functionally and formally applied to its tech horror format. Here, a hacker is an intangible malevolent entity set on haunting your most private and personal spaces. Digital identity theft is an act of possession. When everyone's details are data mined and disseminated, it makes telepathy look like child's play.
Wait just 1 second, can you wait?
What ensues is as ingenious as it is self-aware, as silly as it is unbelievably mean-spirited. Like double-clicking an unsecured email attachment titled badvibes.exe, Unfriended Dark Web will leave you flinching, covering your webcam, and launching your computer into the nearest latrine. So those are 20 horror and horror-adjacent films you may or may not have had the chance to catch yet, that come highly recommended from me. Don't forget to watch the previous episodes, let me know your underground faves in the comments, and have yourselves a happy Halloween. Oh no, it's a woman with a hammer for our Patreon producers Jennifer C, Claire MD, Becky O, Kay Kraus, Jennifer Fetish, Reed Stoven, Cece Sings, and Nicholas Lerevere, and a stay clear of the poisonous horse for all these amazing folks who support us over on Patreon. So how many of these films have you seen? How many do you want to check out after this video? And please recommend me any underrated gems that I've missed for their potential inclusion on next year's list. And if you're in a position to do so, head on over to our Patreon and sign up to the In Frame Out Film Club, membership to our Discord, and get your name in the end credits. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.